This was last summer, and I'm still not over it. I'm a 23-year-old dude, kinda average, not exactly Rambo, but I love the outdoors. Me and my two buddies, Nate and Chris, decided to go camping for a weekend in this forest about an hour outside our town. It's this big, quiet spot with pine trees, a lake, and a bunch of trails, perfect for getting away from everything. We've been hyped for weeks, packing our tent, fishing gear, and a cooler full of beers, ready for some fishing, campfire vibes, and just kicking back. But man, what we saw out there still gives me nightmares, and I'm not sure we dodged a bullet or what. It was a Friday afternoon when we got to the campground. The place was pretty empty for a summer weekend, just a few other tents scattered far off and one RV parked near the entrance. We picked a spot by the lake, set up our tent, and got a fire going. The sun was setting, painting the sky all orange and pink, and we were cracking open some beers, laughing about dumb stuff from high school. Nate's the funny one, always got a story, and Chris is the planner, making sure we didn't forget the bug spray or whatever. Me, I'm just happy to be out there, away from my dead-end retail job. Everything was perfect until it wasn't. We'd been at the campsite for a couple hours, probably around 9 p.m., when we decided to take a walk to the lake to check out the stars. It was dark, but we had our flashlights, and the moon was bright enough to light up the path. The trail to the lake cuts through some thick trees, and it's about a 5-minute walk from our site. We were halfway there, joking around, when Nate stopped dead and grabbed my arm. "Yo, you see that?" he whispered, pointing his flashlight toward a clearing just off the trail. I squinted, and there was this guy, maybe 30 or 40, standing by a big oak tree. He was wearing a dark jacket, jeans, and a beanie, even though it was warm out. What really caught my eye, though, was the huge burlap sack at his feet, lumpy like it was stuffed with something heavy. At first, I thought maybe he was just another camper, maybe moving gear or something. But then I noticed he was digging fast, like he was in a hurry. He had a shovel, and he was scooping dirt into a pile next to the sack. The way he kept looking around, all twitchy, made my stomach turn. Chris whispered, "What the hell's he doing?" And I just shook my head, my heart starting to race. We ducked behind some bushes, keeping our flashlights low so he wouldn't spot us. The guy didn't see us, but he was working hard, grunting as he dug, and that sack was just sitting there, looking way too big for camping gear or trash. My mind went straight to those true crime shows, bodies in bags, buried in the woods. I know it sounds dramatic, but that's where my head went. We didn't say a word to him. No way were we going to confront some random dude digging a hole in the middle of nowhere. We just crouched there, watching, barely breathing. After a minute, he stopped digging, wiped his forehead, and started dragging the sack toward the hole. It looked heavy, like he was struggling to move it, and I swear I heard something thump inside, like it wasn't just clothes or equipment. My hands were sweaty, gripping my flashlight so tight my knuckles hurt. Nate whispered, "We gotta get out of here," and Chris nodded, his eyes wide as saucers. We backed away slowly, trying not to snap any twigs or make noise, and booked it back to our campsite, our flashlights bouncing all over the place. When we got back to the tent, we were all freaking out, talking over each other in hushed voices. "Was that guy burying something?" I said, my voice shaking. Chris was like, "No way, that was normal." "That sack was huge, man." Nate, trying to stay calm but clearly rattled, said, "Maybe it's just garbage or something, but we ain't sticking around to find out." We agreed to keep the fire low and stay quiet, hoping the guy didn't know we'd seen him. I kept picturing that sack, wondering what the heck was in it. My imagination was running wild, drugs, stolen stuff, or, God forbid, something worse. We decided to sleep in shifts, just in case, with one of us keeping watch while the others tried to rest. Around 1 a.m., I was on watch, sitting by the fire with a stick in my hand, feeling like a kid scared of the boogeyman. The forest was dead quiet, except for the crickets and the occasional owl. Then I heard it, a rustle in the bushes, maybe 20 yards from our campsite. I froze, my heart pounding so loud I thought it'd wake the guys. I grabbed my flashlight and pointed it toward the noise, but I didn't see anything. I whispered, "Nate, Chris, wake up," and they both shot up, bleary-eyed but alert. "Something's out there," I said, and we all listened, straining to hear. The rustling stopped, but then we heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, like someone was circling our camp. Chris grabbed the hatchet we used for firewood, and Nate picked up a big stick, but we didn't dare call out. We just sat there, flashlights off, staring into the dark. Then I saw him, or at least I think it was him. A figure in a dark jacket, standing just at the edge of the firelight, maybe 30 feet away. He wasn't moving, just standing there, head tilted like he was watching us. My blood ran cold, and I could tell the guys were freaking out too. Chris whispered, "Is that the guy from the clearing?" And I nodded, too scared to speak. We stayed like that for what felt like forever, maybe a minute, until the figure turned and melted back into the trees. The footsteps faded, and it was quiet again. None of us slept much after that. We kept the fire going and took turns watching until the sun came up. At dawn, we packed up our stuff faster than you believe, not even bothering to make coffee. We hiked back to the trailhead, constantly checking over our shoulders, but we didn't see the guy or his truck. When we got to my car, I noticed something that made my stomach drop, a fresh scratch along the driver's side door, like someone had dragged a key or a knife across it. It wasn't there when we parked the day before. I didn't say anything to the guys. I was too shaken up, and I didn't want to freak them out more. We drove straight to a diner in town, all of us quiet, still processing what happened. Over greasy eggs and coffee, we talked it out. Nate was like, "That dude was up to no good. You don't bury a sack like that unless you're hiding something." Chris kept saying it could have been anything, poached games, stolen goods, but we all knew it felt way darker than that. I couldn't stop thinking about how he'd watched us, how he'd followed us back to our camp. Was he making sure we wouldn't talk? Did he know we'd seen him? When I got home, I called the local sheriff's office and told them what we saw, leaving out the part where I was freaking out like a kid. I described the guy, the sack, the digging, and how he'd been near our camp. They said they'd send a ranger to check the clearing, but I never heard back. A week later, I saw a news story about a missing hiker in that same forest, last seen a few days before our trip. No details about a suspect, but it made my skin crawl. Was it connected? I have no idea, but I can't shake the thought that we saw something we weren't supposed to. So this happened 10 years ago when I was just 12 years old, and it's still one of the scariest things I've ever been through. It was a warm summer evening, probably around 7 p.m., and the sky was all pink and purple, just starting to get dusky. I'd been at my best friend Sarah's house a few blocks away, where we'd spent the day making friendship bracelets and eating popsicles. My mom always let me walk home alone since it was only like a 10-minute walk, and our town felt safe as anything. I was wearing my favorite purple hoodie and these beat-up sneakers, humming some dumb song from the radio, my backpack bouncing with every step. The route was simple, down Maple Street, past the corner store, and through this little alley that cut behind the library. It was a shortcut I'd taken a million times, no big deal. As I turned into the alley, I noticed this guy sitting against a brick wall near a dumpster. He was older, maybe in his 40s, with matted hair and a scruffy beard, wearing a tattered coat that looked way too heavy for summer. There were a couple of plastic bags stuffed with stuff next to him, and he was muttering to himself, his head down. I'd seen homeless folks around town before. My parents always said to be kind but keep my distance, so I didn't think much of it. I just kept walking, giving him a wide berth, sticking to the other side of the alley. But as I passed, he looked up and his eyes locked onto me. They were wild, like he wasn't all there, and my stomach did a little flip. I sped up, clutching the straps of my backpack, telling myself he was just some guy, probably harmless. Then I heard him move. His boots scraped against the pavement, and I glanced back to see him standing up, still muttering, but louder now, like he was arguing with someone who wasn't there. My heart started racing, but I kept my head down, thinking if I just got to the end of the alley, I'd be fine. That's when he yelled, "Hey, you're one of them." His voice was all raspy and sharp, and it made my skin crawl. I didn't know what he meant, but I wasn't about to stop and ask. I started walking faster, my sneakers slapping the ground, the alley seeming way longer than it ever had before. I heard his footsteps behind me, fast and uneven, like he was stumbling but determined. I looked back, and he was coming toward me, holding something in his hand. It glinted in the fading light, a knife, small but sharp, like one of those pocket knives my dad used for fishing. My heart jumped into my throat, and I broke into a run, my backpack bouncing like crazy. He shouted again, "You can't hide from them. They're watching." His voice was unhinged, like he was screaming at something only he could see. I was terrified, my legs shaking as I sprinted toward the end of the alley, where it opened onto a busy street. I could hear him getting closer, his boots pounding the pavement, his muttering turning into this weird, angry chant about eyes in the sky and taking what's theirs. I was only 12, so I didn't know what to do except run and scream for help. "Somebody help me," I yelled, my voice high and panicky, but the alley was empty and the street was still too far. I tripped over a crack in the pavement, my hands scraping the ground as I caught myself, and I thought for sure he was going to catch up. I scrambled up, tears stinging my eyes, and kept running, my breath coming out in sobs. Just as I reached the end of the alley, I saw Mr. Thompson, the guy who owned the corner store, locking up for the night. I screamed, "Mr. Thompson, help!" And he turned, his eyes going wide when he saw me barreling toward him, this crazy guy right behind me. The homeless man was maybe 10 feet away now, waving the knife, still yelling about them and how I was part of it. Mr. Thompson dropped his keys and ran toward me, shouting, "Hey, back off," in this big, booming voice that made me feel a tiny bit safer. The guy stopped short when he saw Mr. Thompson, like he snapped out of whatever trance he was in. He stood there, breathing hard, the knife still in his hand but lowered now. His eyes darted between me and Mr. Thompson, and for a second, I thought he might lunge anyway. But then he turned and bolted back down the alley, disappearing around the dumpster. My legs gave out, and I dropped to the ground, crying my eyes out, my hands scraped and my knees shaking. Mr. Thompson knelt next to me, asking, "You okay, kid? Did he hurt you?" I shook my head, too freaked out to talk, just sobbing and trying to catch my breath. He called the cops right there, and they showed up in a few minutes, their lights flashing in the dusk. I told them everything, how the guy had been muttering, how he'd chased me with a knife, what he'd yelled. They searched the alley but didn't find him, just his bags of stuff by the dumpster. One of the cops said they knew him, a local homeless guy with mental health issues who'd been in and out of trouble. They said he was usually harmless but could get erratic when he was off his meds. That didn't make me feel any better. I kept thinking about that knife, those wild eyes, and how close he'd gotten. Mr. Thompson walked me home, and my mom lost it when she saw me, all teary and scraped up. I told her and my dad what happened, and they hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. They wanted to ground me for taking the alley, but I think they were too relieved I was okay. The cops came by later to check on me, but they never found the guy. They said he probably moved on to another part of town, but I was paranoid for weeks, jumping at every shadow, thinking he'd show up again. My parents wouldn't let me walk alone for months, and I didn't argue. I stopped taking that shortcut, even in broad daylight. This happened when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and even now, it's one of the creepiest and most confusing things I've ever been through. It was a scorching hot afternoon during summer vacation, the kind where the air feels like it's sticking to your skin. I decided to set up a lemonade stand a couple of blocks from my house, just to make a few bucks and have some fun. My friend was with me, and we hauled our bikes 2 blocks down the street, set up a wobbly little table, and got our lemonade pitchers ready. We were all giggles and excitement, thinking we were big shots running our own business. A few hours went by, and we'd sold a decent amount of lemonade to neighbors and a couple of joggers. It was getting late, though, and the sun was starting to dip, casting long shadows on the pavement. My friend said she had to head home for dinner, leaving me alone to pack up. I was folding up the table and gathering the pitchers, feeling a little bummed but not too worried. It was just a quiet neighborhood street, and I had done this before. That's when this guy showed up. He was maybe in his 30s, tall and lanky, with this really weird look on his face, like a smile that didn't quite fit too wide, with eyes that were way too open, almost bulging. He walked right up to me, closer than anyone should, and I swear I'll never forget what he said. What would happen if you had no skin? His voice was calm but sharp, like he was asking about the weather. I froze, my hands clutching a pitcher, and all I could manage was a shaky, not sure. He didn't blink, just kept staring with that creepy grin and said, "What would happen if you had no heart?" What happened if you had no toes? What happened if you had no eyes? Each question came faster, and he kept stepping closer, his shoes scuffing the sidewalk. I was just a kid, naive as heck, so I didn't fully get how messed up this was, but my gut was screaming that something was wrong. My heart was pounding, and I started grabbing my stuff in a hurry. Cups, tablecloth, the half-empty pitcher, all of it. I had too much to carry, so I couldn't ride my bike. I just wheeled it beside me, my hand shaking as I started walking toward home. The guy didn't say anything else, but I could hear his footsteps behind me, steady and deliberate. He kept asking those same weird questions, like a broken record. What happened if you had no hands? What happened if you had no nose? I walked faster, my sneakers slapping the pavement, and he sped up too, matching my pace. I kept glancing back, hoping he'd stop, but every time I looked, he was there, maybe a few yards behind, that same eerie smile plastered on his face. Finally, after what felt like forever, he slowed down and stopped at a corner. I kept moving, my bike wobbling, because I was so nervous. When I looked back again, he was just standing there, staring at me, not moving. It was like he was waiting for something, but I didn't stick around to find out what. I hustled home, my heart racing the whole way, and locked the door behind me. I never told my parents. I don't know why, maybe because I was more confused than scared, or maybe I thought they wouldn't believe me. I never saw that guy again, thank God, but even now, looking back, it gives me chills. Was he just some harmless weirdo with a messed up sense of humor? Was he mentally off? Or was he something worse? Someone dangerous who got a kick out of freaking out a kid? I still don't know, and it bugs me to this day. It's one of those things that sticks with you. You know, like a bad dream you can't quite shake. This happened about 10 years ago when I was at university, and it's still one of the creepiest things I've ever experienced. Nothing like it has happened before or since, and I'm still not sure what to make of it. I was living on the north side of town, and the university library was way down on the south side. The streets in our town are numbered from north to south, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and so on, but there's this train track with a small wooded area that cuts through between 13th and 14th Street. Only a few roads cross under it, so you have to plan your route carefully. It was a Friday the 13th, and I'd been studying late at the library until about 2 a.m., which wasn't unusual for me back then. I was walking home, heading north, and had to jog down 13th Street to get to one of the roads that passes under the railway. It was dark, quiet, and a little chilly, but I was used to the walk. As I turned onto 13th, the streetlight right above me flickered and went out. I didn't think much of it, those old lights were always glitchy. But then, as I kept walking, the next streetlight went out just as I passed under it. Then the next one. Then the next. By the time I reached the middle of the block, every single streetlight in front of me just went dark, like someone flipped a switch. I stopped dead in my tracks, my stomach doing a little flip. That's when I noticed the first streetlight, the one I'd passed, flicked back on. I turned around, drawn to the light, and my heart just about stopped. Standing right under that first streetlight was a figure, someone in a white hoodie and dark pants, head down, staring at the ground. I couldn't see their face, and they weren't moving, just standing there like a statue. I tried to stay calm, telling myself it was just some rando, but then another streetlight at the other end of the block, the one in front of me, lit up. I glanced over, and there was the same figure. White hoodie, dark pants, head down, standing perfectly still, about 500 yards from the first light. I did a double take, whipping my head back to the first streetlight, but nobody was there anymore. My skin started crawling. Now I was freaking out. My heart was pounding like a drum, and I could feel the hairs on my neck standing up. The figure in front of me slowly lifted their head, and I swear, under that hood, it looked empty, like there was nothing but shadow where a face should have been. I tried to play it cool, puffing out my chest a bit and calling out, "Hello," but my voice came out all high and squeaky, totally betraying me. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it turned and walked across the street, disappearing into the wooded area by the train tracks. I could still see the white of the hoodie through the trees for a few seconds before it was gone completely. Then, all at once, every streetlight on the block, probably 10 of them, snapped back on, lighting up the street like nothing had happened. I didn't wait around to figure it out. I booked it, running as fast as my legs could carry me. All the way home, my lungs were burning, and I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting that thing to be right behind me. When I finally got to my apartment, I locked the door, double-checked it, and just sat there, trying to catch my breath and make sense of what I'd seen. I keep telling myself it was some elaborate prank, maybe some jerk messing with me, because it was Friday the 13th. But deep down, I'm not so sure. The way those lights went out, the way that figure moved, the empty hood, it felt like something else entirely. I've never walked down 13th Street at night again, and I don't plan to. Whatever that was, I don't want to run into it ever again. I grew up in the suburbs of Sacramento, California, in a middle-class neighborhood where everything always felt safe. As a kid, I'd walk home from school with my friends, playing hide-and-seek or shooting hoops in the street without a care in the world. We never had any weird run-ins, nothing to make you look over your shoulder. I'm 30 now, a guy who's pretty introverted and maybe a bit naive back then, and this story still sticks with me like a bad memory I can't shake. When I was a teenager, I'd spend my weekends riding my bike for hours around a 10-block radius from my house. Sacramento usually had great weather in the spring, mild temperatures, clear skies, plenty of sunshine. I had this speedometer on my bike, and I'd cruise at about 12 to 16 miles an hour, sticking to the right-hand bike lane, just enjoying the breeze and the freedom. I was 13 when this one incident happened, and it's burned into my brain. I was pedaling along in the neighborhood, minding my own business, when this windowless white van pulled up on my left, matching my speed exactly. I glanced over, not thinking much of it at first. It was a residential street, so it didn't seem weird that a van would go slow. Blazing by at 35 miles an hour would have been odder. But then a few seconds later, the right side door slid open with a loud scrape, and I saw two guys in the back and one guy driving. My stomach did a little flip, but I kept pedaling, trying to stay cool. I looked over again, and one of the guys in the back yelled, loud enough to make me jump, "Get in the van." I didn't say anything back. My heart started racing, and I just pedaled harder, pushing my speed up to about 18 miles an hour. Not exactly lightning fast, but it was all I had. The van sped up too, staying right next to me, so close I could have reached out and touched it. I glanced over, and it was creepy as hell inside. The two guys in the back weren't wearing seatbelts, just sitting on these random seats. I could see the bare metal floor of the van, and there was some rope coiled up in the corner. The guy who yelled leaned out a bit, his arm practically dangling toward me, and shouted again, more insistent this time, "Get in the van." We were still going straight, but I knew the road we were on was about to hit an intersection. Right as he reached out, like he was going to grab me, I made a split-second decision and cranked my handlebars hard to the right, cutting onto the intersecting street. The van couldn't follow without flipping over. They had to keep going straight. I knew the neighborhood like the back of my hand, so I started weaving through the residential streets, all these curvy roads that felt like a maze. In hindsight, that was a risky move. Those winding streets meant I couldn't see far ahead, and they could have easily caught up to me if they tried. But luck was on my side. They didn't make another pass. I kept pedaling like my life depended on it, my legs burning, checking over my shoulder every few seconds. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. When I finally got home, I was a sweaty mess, but I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents, not my friends, nobody. To this day, only a couple of people know about it, and now I guess I'm sharing it with you. Looking back, I can't stop wondering what those guys wanted. Were they just messing around, trying to scare a kid with some ropes they use for rock climbing, or something innocent? Or was it something darker, something malicious? Did they ever try that with anyone else who didn't get away? Those questions still haunt me. It was one of those moments that makes you realize how fast things can go from normal to terrifying, and I'll never forget it. My friend Molly's grandparents passed away recently, and they left her their old house, which has been in their family for 3 generations. It was built back in the late 1930s, but her family's owned it since the 70s. According to her grandparents, weird stuff has been going on in that place from the moment they moved in. Molly and I have both experienced some seriously creepy things there, and I'm hoping you guys might have some advice on what's going on or how to make it stop. The house has this long hallway that's like the epicenter of all the strangeness. Every single time you walk down it alone, you hear and feel what I can only describe as someone sprinting up behind you, like they're about to jump on your back. You hear heavy footsteps, fast breathing, the whole deal, like someone's right there. It happens so quick, in the blink of an eye, but when you spin around, there's nothing, just dead silence. It's so jarring that you start questioning your own sanity. The first time it happened to me, I was visiting and had no clue about the house's history. I bolted out to the backyard where everyone else was hanging out, and before I could even say anything, Molly looked at me and said, "Oh, by the way, I should probably warn you, this house is haunted." I started to tell her, "That's funny because I swear someone just ran up behind me." And before I could finish, everyone in the group said in unison, "In the hallway." Apparently, it's happened to all of them too, at different times. Then there's the nighttime stuff. Every night, without fail, you hear someone pacing up and down that same hallway. It goes on for hours, back and forth, like they're restless or something. But if you get up the nerve to peek into the hallway or walk out there, the pacing stops. Just long enough for you to think it's over and go back to what you were doing. Then, the second you settle down, it starts up again. It's like whatever it is knows you're listening. There's one room right off the hallway that's even weirder. If you sleep in there, you'll get woken up in the morning by 3 soft knocks on the door. Always the same 3 gentle taps with a long pause between each one. If you ignore it, the knocks just keep coming every couple of minutes until you finally get up and do something. The first time it happened, Molly and I were both crashed out in that room. I was the only one who woke up to the knocking at first, and I thought it might be her dad messing with us. But the knocks were so strange, too soft, too precise, and her dad's the type who'd yell something goofy through the door to wake us up. After the 3rd or 4th set of knocks, I checked the window and saw all the cars were gone. We were the only ones home. I freaked out and shook Molly awake. She was annoyed, grumbling as she got up to open the door and prove nothing was there. But the second she stood up, the door, a heavy sliding door that's not easy to move, slid open halfway, all by itself. No wind, no draft, nothing that could explain it. Those sliding doors are all over the house, and they open like that all the time, no matter how securely they're shut. Other weird stuff happens too. Things go missing randomly, keys, books, whatever, and sometimes stuff falls off shelves for no reason. Molly says she's heard voices before, like people talking in hushed tones. One time, she woke up to someone screaming her name in the hallway, clear as day, but no one was there. Then there's this one mirror in the house that's always cracked. Her grandparents said they replaced it over and over, but every time they did, they'd wake up the next morning to find it cracked again, right down the middle, like someone took a hammer to it. It's all so unsettling, and it's always worse when you're alone in the house. Molly and I have both felt that same sprinting behind you thing, heard the pacing, and dealt with the knocking. It's like the house has a mind of its own. I'm not sure what's causing it, ghost, some kind of energy, or what, but it's been going on for decades. If any of you have dealt with something like this before, I'd love to hear about it. Is there a way to make it stop? Any advice would be awesome, because honestly, it's freaking us out. I'm a 17-year-old redheaded girl, about 100 pounds, and probably the least intimidating person you'll ever meet. My boyfriend Ian is 22, a super skinny white dude with shaggy hair and a ton of tattoos, and he's got to be the second least intimidating person out there. We live in the grimiest, most rundown part of town, but every Thursday evening, we have this tradition of going on a picnic. We switch up the location each time, but we usually end up at our favorite spot, which we call the Heaven Spot. It's this hidden gem in the middle of all the urban decay. Think abandoned buildings and graffiti everywhere. There's this old historical house surrounded by huge weeping willows, covered in vines, and across from it is this gorgeous, secluded field with gardens and the greenest grass you've ever seen. It even has solar garden lights that give the place a soft glow at night. The towering trees and deserted streets make it feel like our own private oasis, so we go there a lot. This one time, we were at the Heaven Spot, chilling in a tree, smoking a blunt, and just soaking in the vibe, acting like nothing bad could ever touch us because, we're teenagers and invincible. We noticed this guy walking by, which was unusual since the street's usually empty. He looked like he was in his late 20s, kind of short but really built, wearing a gray hoodie and baggy pants. He had this face tattoo, which stood out, but we didn't think much of it at first. We're in the ghetto after all. Our neighbor was a meth head, and a homeless guy crashed with us for 6 months once. We figured he was just some tweaker, a drug dealer, or maybe just lost. We went back to our picnic, laughing and passing the blunt, not giving him a second thought. He kept showing up, though, pacing up and down the street, looking nervous. We saw him a few more times, but we were too caught up in our own world to care. The sun started setting, and we decided to head home before it got too dark. Our place is about 2 blocks away, tucked behind an apartment complex in this tiny quadruplex that's hard to find unless you know where to look. We were walking down the street, which was getting darker by the second, when Ian turned to me and whispered, "Hey, I'm pretty sure that guy's following us." I glanced back and saw the dude from earlier, maybe 4 or 5 intersections back, just far enough to be creepy but not close enough to be sure. I'm kind of oblivious sometimes, so I brushed it off, thinking Ian was just paranoid from the weed. I kept babbling about something dumb, but a few seconds later, he cut me off, his voice lower, more serious. "No, I'm telling you he's following us." That got my attention. Ian's not the type to get spooked. He's fearless, usually. I asked, "How do you know he's not just walking the same way?" He told me to turn around and check where the guy was, then act like nothing was wrong. I looked back, and yeah, he was a bit closer, but it didn't seem too weird yet. We kept walking, and about 10 seconds later, Ian said, "Okay, look again." This time, the guy was way closer, like he'd been sprinting toward us but slowed down to a casual walk the second I turned. My heart started racing. We tested it again, crossing the street to see what he'd do, and sure enough, he crossed too, keeping pace. Every time we looked back, he'd act normal, but when we weren't looking, he was closing the gap fast. At this point, we were both in full-on fight or flight mode. Ian whispered, "Run," and took off like a bat out of hell. Let me tell you, Ian was a track star in high school, and in 3 seconds flat, he was halfway up the street, rounding a dim corner, leading me in the dust. I felt like that poor sap in a zombie movie, who gets tripped so the other guy can escape. Problem is, I'm a terrible runner, probably my biggest weakness. I took off anyway, my legs pumping as fast as they could, glancing back to see if the guy was chasing me. He was, and he was right on my tail, his gray hoodie bouncing as he ran. There was no one around, no cars, no people, just me, Ian's disappearing shadow, and this dude. I didn't have a wallet or anything valuable, so even if he was trying to rob me, this wasn't going to end well. I made it around the corner toward our apartment complex, my lungs burning, and started zigzagging through the buildings. I know this area like the back of my hand, way better than this guy could. I darted through a clearing, past the first quadruplex that looks just like ours, and looped around, hauling ass to our front door. My hands were shaking like crazy as I fumbled for my keys, somehow managing to jam them into the lock. I flung the door open, slammed it shut, and locked it, my chest heaving like I'd just run a marathon. I stood there, frozen, waiting in terror. Did I lose him? Did he see where I went? Was he going to come back later and try to break in? Our place has windows everywhere, including a big one on the door with a broken blind that anyone could peek through. I dropped to the floor, sitting below the door so he wouldn't see me, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it. Ian, by the way, was nowhere to be found, probably safe somewhere, the jerk. I didn't have any weapons, and I was too scared to move to grab my phone, worried he'd see my shadow through the blinds. Then I saw it. A shadowy figure appeared at the broken blind on the door. I could only make out his silhouette, but I knew it was him, just standing there, looking inside. I ducked lower, barely breathing, praying he couldn't see me. He stayed there for what felt like forever, at least a minute, before finally walking away. I sat there, paralyzed, not knowing if he'd seen me, or if my zigzagging had confused him enough that he wasn't sure which door I'd gone into. I don't know what he wanted or why he chased us. Why didn't he just jump us back at the field when we were alone? It was so secluded, he could have done whatever he wanted. To this day, I'm not sure if I got lucky or if he just gave up. The worst part? Ian never apologized for ditching me. I still give him crap about it. But that night shook me up bad, and I'm way more careful now when we're out in the neighborhood. If you've got any ideas about who that guy was or what he was after, I'd love to hear them. It's one of those things that just sticks with you, you know. This all went down my junior year of high school when I was 15, in that awkward phase where I thought I knew everything but was still super impressionable. It was early in the school year, and I was sitting in my 6th period chem class, probably zoning out and sneaking looks at my phone under one of those clunky gray lab tables. I heard two people laughing to my right, Eric and Kelly. The classroom was a long rectangle, so the teacher up front could barely hear what was going on in the back. Eric and Kelly weren't, like, the most popular kids, but they were known. My younger sister had played a tennis match against Eric a month or two earlier, and she told me about him. He was the class clown, tall, good-looking, super charismatic. I wasn't into him like that, but I could see why others were. That day, I made one of the worst decisions of my life. I decided I wanted to be friends with Eric. Eric was in my 2nd, 5th, and 6th period, so I saw him a lot. The next morning in Spanish class, I poked him in the back and said, "Hey, I heard my sister kicked you, but in tennis." He turned around with this goofy grin, his friends glancing at me. "Who's your sister?" he asked, his voice all playful and drawn out. I told him, "Sharon." I don't remember the rest of that chat, but I'm pretty sure he denied losing the match, and we just moved on. Later, in Algebra 2, the teacher would lecture for a bit, assign homework, and let us work on it in class so we wouldn't have to take it home. I was staring at my paper, probably confused as heck when I heard, "Hey girl." I looked down, and there was Eric crouched next to my desk on the floor, grinning like a goof. "What's up?" he said. He started asking about tennis, and when I mentioned I played too, his face lit up like I just handed him a winning lottery ticket. That's when he latched onto me. He asked for my phone number, and I gave it to him without thinking twice. Later that day, in 6th period, he introduced me to Kelly, who was older and kinda intimidating, not gonna lie. I never met anyone like her, and I was stoked about these new, interesting friends. That night, Eric started texting me nonstop, asking random questions and replying with LOL to everything I said, even if it wasn't funny. I thought it was weird, but figured it was just his vibe. From then on, he was like my shadow. We hung out all the time at school, 2nd, 5th, 6th periods, you name it, and we were in constant contact after hours. This was 2011, so we were mostly on Facebook or doing group calls with Kelly, plus 2 other friends I brought into the mix, Sasha and Natalie. But there were red flags from the jump. Eric would hold my hand at school, which was odd, and told everyone he'd taken my virginity, which was straight up not true. I didn't get too mad about it. I just thought it was a dumb joke. He'd say stuff like, "Your virginity belongs to me," and I'd brush it off as him being weird. He once told me he wasn't into girls but would hook up with them, then make fun of them to everyone. He walked down the hall after 5th period and stopped to give these freshman girls quick pecks on the lips, like it was some kind of ritual. One time we were heading to the bus, and I pointed out a girl who was cheating on her boyfriend. Immature, I know, but we were in high school. I whispered it to Eric, and he ran up to her, stopped her, pointed at me, and told her what I'd said. She stormed over and yelled at me while he stood there laughing his head off. A few months into this friendship, things got darker. I started sneaking out with Eric, even bringing him alcohol from my dad's liquor cabinet. Eric was a heavy drinker for a kid our age. It all came to a head one night when he asked me and Kelly to come over. His dad was in prison, his mom was in rehab, so he lived with his grandparents. We pulled up to his house, but his car wasn't there. We waited, and finally he sped into the neighborhood, stumbled out of his car, totally wasted. We followed him inside, his grandparents weren't home, and I must have said something that set him off, because the next thing I knew, he grabbed a knife from the kitchen counter and charged at me. I bolted, sprinting to Kelly's car, slamming the door and locking it. He just stared at me through the window and burst out laughing like it was all a big joke. My heart was racing, my blood felt ice cold, but Kelly just got in and we peeled out. I don't know why I kept hanging out with him. It was like being in an abusive relationship. He'd tell me I was ugly, that he was the only guy who'd ever find me attractive, but then turn it into a joke, so I'd let it slide. The breaking point came when I heard about the baby squirrel. He found a live baby squirrel, brought it home, and when his grandparents said they didn't want it in the house, he walked outside and tossed it into a retention pond like it was nothing. I wasn't there, but the story made my stomach turn. A few days later, in algebra, he knocked my pen off my desk and called me a jerk. That was it. I'd had enough. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Eric, I don't want to be friends anymore. Don't talk to me." His head snapped back, and he slid into the desk in front of me, grinning. "You won't be able to ignore me," he laughed. "I know where to find you." I snapped, "Are you threatening me?" He just smirked and said, "I'm going to college next year. You'll never get away from me." It sounds like something out of a cheesy horror movie, but that's exactly how it went down. The next week was hell. He called me non-stop, all jovial at first, like he thought I'd come around. When he realized I was serious, he got pushy. One day in math class, he came up to me, opened his backpack, and showed me a bunch of big kitchen knives inside. "You know, in case there's a zombie attack or something," he said with that same creepy smile. I should have told a teacher right then, but I didn't. A few days later, he pushed me too far. He told me he was going to assault me, kill me, and make Natalie film it. That was it. I went straight to the dean's office and spilled everything. I'd always been a good kid, never in trouble, so they believed me. They called Eric in, and he admitted to everything, nodding and smiling like it was no big deal. The dean, Mr. Thomas, sat me down the next day and told me I needed to call the police. They said there was something seriously wrong with him, that he just didn't get how messed up his actions were. The school put a restraining order on him. He wasn't supposed to talk to me, and during tests, he had to be taken to a separate room. But Eric being Eric, he found ways around it. He'd talk about me right in front of my face, saying stuff to the class like, "Oh, she put a restraining order on me because she thinks I'm dangerous." The teacher laughed and said, "Doesn't she know you're just joking? That's just you being Eric." The backlash was brutal. His friends shunned me, laughed at me, and even some of my own friends said I was overreacting. Natalie was the only one who had my back. She'd always felt uneasy around him and said he'd started following her between classes too. On his birthday, he came up to me with Kelly, and she said, "He wants you to wish him a happy birthday." I ignored them. Later, a mutual friend called and said Eric was threatening to take his own life if I didn't talk to him again. I went back to the dean's office, and this time every dean, vice principal, and even the principal got involved. My school was big, about 550 kids in my year, so this was a huge deal. By the end of the year, things calmed down a bit. Eric's attention shifted elsewhere, and I worked with the dean to pick senior year classes that wouldn't overlap with his. He was still watching me, though. I'd be walking down the hall with someone he didn't know, and suddenly he'd pop up introducing himself like, "Hey, I'm Eric, nice to meet you." He told my friends we were soulmates and that I'd come around eventually. When I graduated and moved out of town for college, I told my new friends that if anything ever happened to me, Eric was the one to blame. That's where the story kinda ends, no real closure. He always seems to know when I'm back in town, even though I blocked him on everything. I suspect he still drives by my house. He's been arrested since then, a couple of times for drug charges and DUIs. I looked at his mugshots while writing this, and those dead eyes still give me chills. Sometimes I wonder if I overreacted, if it was all just a sick joke. But those eyes, they tell me there was something seriously wrong with him. I'm a young gay guy living in a medium-sized city where the dating scene is pretty limited. Most queer folks here rely on apps or websites to meet people, and I'm no different. I browse sites like Craigslist daily, just checking if there's anyone new I haven't already talked to, but I rarely meet up with anyone. The fear of STIs or getting robbed always lingers in the back of my mind, so I usually just stick to scrolling. About 6 months ago, though, I came across an ad on Craigslist that caught my eye. It was from a guy a bit older than me who seemed to want the same things I did, not just a quick hookup, but to meet up, grab drinks, maybe cuddle, and see where things go. We started texting and hit it off, chatting for about a month without making solid plans. Finally, I worked up the nerve to ask if he wanted to meet, and he said yes. We decided I'd drive to his place, about 10 miles outside the city limits. It was around 6 p.m. when I headed out, the sun's still up but starting to dip, casting that golden light that makes everything feel a little softer. He texted me to say he'd be walking along the road, coming back from a friend's place, and asked me to pick him up so we could head to his house together. He'd mentioned before that he had 2 kids who lived with him, but their mom wasn't in the picture, and he said the kids were at a friend's house, so we'd have the place to ourselves. I didn't think much of it and drove out to the area he described, a dirt roadway outside the city, dotted with random trailers spread out over acres of empty land. When I spotted him, he was holding this huge speaker and wearing a hoodie, which seemed weird since it wasn't cold at all where we live. I pulled over and tried to break the ice, saying something light like, "Hey, stranger, need a ride?" He didn't smile or say a word, just opened the passenger door and climbed in, sitting there all stiff and silent. I was thrown off because we'd been chatting so easily for a month, and I expected him to at least act happy to see me. Instead, he was just awkward. I brushed it off and started driving toward his place, but then he told me to turn around and head back to the main road. He wanted to grab a blunt and some alcohol so we could chill. I figured, sure, why not, and headed back without thinking it was too strange. On the way, still on this long, dark dirt road with no streetlights, he casually mentioned that his house didn't have power and asked if that was okay. That caught me off guard. No power? I tried to play it cool and said, "Sure, as long as you've got candles or some kind of light." He didn't respond, just kept staring straight ahead like I hadn't said anything. My mind started racing. He told me his kids lived with him, so I asked, "What about your kids? How are they staying in a house with no power?" That's when things got really weird. He said, "Oh, they're staying with their mom for a while. But just a few days ago, he told me their mom wasn't around." The inconsistency hit me like a red flag, but I wasn't feeling in danger yet, just uneasy. We got to a store, and he got out still with his hoodie up, covering his face like he was hiding from someone. That seemed odd, but he came back with his stuff, and we started the 15-minute drive back to his place. Out of nowhere, he said, "You know, I had to sling crack to get money for this so we could hang out tonight." I froze. Did he just say that? My heart started pounding, but I tried to keep my cool. Trying to change the subject, I asked if he had condoms, just in case we needed them. He said no, so I dropped him off at another nearby store to grab some, thinking this might be my chance to get out of this increasingly sketchy situation. While he was inside, I sat in my car, my mind racing. I wanted to just drive off and block his number, but his huge speaker was still in my floorboard, and I didn't want him accusing me of stealing it or anything crazy. So in a panic, I jumped out, ran to the passenger side, and started dragging the speaker out of the car. That's when I heard him behind me. "Hey, what are you doing?" My stomach dropped like I'd been caught sneaking cookies as a kid. I stammered, "Oh, I was just moving this to the back seat so you'd have more room." It was a lame excuse, but he seemed to buy it, climbing back into the car. My one shot at ditching him was gone. We started driving down that pitch-black dirt road again, my headlights the only light for miles. My mind was screaming, how do I get out of this alive? He was sitting there, silent, fidgeting with something in his pockets, looking straight ahead like he had some kind of mission. I tried to catch him in another lie, fishing for info, but he barely responded, just kept staring forward. It felt like I was driving him to some goal, and I was just a means to an end. After about 15 minutes, I noticed there were no more trailers, just darkness. I checked my GPS and said, "Hey, your place should be right here, right?" He replied, "Oh, the address I gave you is an old business. My place doesn't show up on Google Maps for some reason." That was it, full-on panic mode. My hands tightened on the wheel, my heart racing as I realized I might be in serious trouble. I slowed the car, desperate for a way out. I blurted out, "Look, my best friend's waiting for me to get back so we can have drinks." I didn't realize this would take so long. I added, "I texted her the address you gave me, so she'd know when to expect me." I was lying through my teeth, hoping it'd scare him off. He seemed irritated, but didn't push back too hard. He said, "Can't we just have a little fun in the car right here? Nobody lives out here, so no one will see us." My blood ran cold. I doubled down, saying, "No, I'm really sorry, but my friend's going to be pissed. She already called me when you were in the store." I told her I'd be back in 30 minutes for our night out. I was ready to jump out and leave my car if he pulled a knife or worse, but thankfully he just huffed, got out, and slammed the door. As he leaned toward the window to say something, I hit the gas and peeled out, leaving a cloud of dust behind me. I couldn't see him in my rearview mirror through the darkness, but I imagined him standing there, maybe cursing me out. I was shaking as I drove away, realizing I might have just escaped something awful. When I got home, I called my friend, who wasn't actually waiting for me. Then my mom, my sister, everyone I loved, and told them a toned-down version of what happened. I teared up a bit, thinking about how close I might have come to being a news story. Later, I looked up the address he gave me. About 2 miles down that road was a single house, all alone at a dead end. I checked it on Google Street View, and it was completely abandoned, no doors, dirty walls, a total wreck. I found out it had been for sale for 5 years and was still on the market. My friends later said they thought he was trying to lure me to that house to do whatever he wanted, since there's no traffic out there. It'd take forever for anyone to find a body in a place like that. After all this, I swore I'd never meet anyone from Craigslist again unless it's in a police station parking lot or something. I thought about never leaving my house except for school and work, but that's not realistic. I'm okay now, but it really hit me how fast things can go from normal to terrifying when you least expect it. I'm a teenage girl who just moved to a new city to start college, living in my own apartment for the first time. I quickly fell in with a group of fun but kind of troubled kids who hung out at a local coffee shop all day. One girl in particular stood out to me. She was sweet, bubbly, and meeting her is still one of my clearest, happiest memories. She told me about a guy named Mike, who she said was like a father to her. Her exact were 10 wearing, he wants to adopt me. She made it clear her real family wasn't great, her dad was in jail, and she had super low self-esteem because he never gave her the love she deserved. I didn't think much of it at the time. Soon after, I met Mike. I was young and naive, so I thought he was awesome right off the bat. He was in his 50s, a scary-looking biker dude with killer tattoos, and he had all these wild stories about his travels and experiences. He seemed smart, worldly, and I felt so mature hanging out with him. The girl I mentioned felt safe with him, and since we both cared about her, we started hanging out a lot. We'd drive around, talk about everything under the sun. When the guy I was dating cheated on me and dumped me, I went to Mike crying, and within a few hours, he made me feel better. He was always there, like a rock. Mike's favorite topic was this girl. He'd met her a couple of years earlier by chance at the coffee shop, and he said she looked exactly like his oldest daughter did at her age. He told me that 2 years ago, his oldest daughter, one of 3, had taken her own life, and this girl filled that void for him. I totally got why he felt so connected to her. A few months went by, and the girl started staying at his place. She was getting close to the legal age where she could choose to be adopted by him, and he was getting more and more excited about it, as was she. I was super close to both of them by then. We'd talk on the phone, I'd visit, I even slept over at his house sometimes. I was teaching her how to drive, and it felt like we were a little family. Mike was like a dad to me in this new town. He looked out for me, told me how I was important to him, just like the girl was. He'd do anything for us. He let me keep a project car in his yard, bought parts for it, helped me work on it, and even got in this one guy's face when he took advantage of me while I was drunk. I trusted Mike with everything I had, looked up to him like he could do no wrong. 6 months after meeting him, the girl hit the age where she could be adopted. I was living in a nearby town by then, so I wasn't seeing them as often, but I'd still visit on weekends. Mike called me, over the moon, saying she'd asked to be adopted by him and that he was planning a big party to celebrate. I was thrilled for them and congratulated him. The last time I saw her was a few days before that call, and just like our first meeting, that goodbye is burned into my memory, her bright smile, her bubbly energy. But a few days later, I got word she'd gone missing. Mike stopped answering my text, then deleted all his social media. Everyone was freaking out. She was loved by everyone, the sweetest, most innocent person you could imagine. I was hit with 2 months of gut-wrenching anxiety, guilt, and hurt. I couldn't believe Mike had ghosted me. I kept telling myself he'd never hurt her, that he loved her and protected her like he did me. Then I saw a comment on a news article on Facebook. The police were looking for Mike to question him, though he wasn't a suspect. A girl commented, saying she was Mike's daughter and needed to talk to the family ASAP, warning that he was dangerous and the girl wasn't safe with him. My heart sank. I messaged her right away, gave her the girl's grandmother's number, and asked what she meant by dangerous. What she told me turned my world upside down. Mike didn't have 3 daughters, only 2. This girl was his eldest, and when she was a kid, he'd sexually assaulted her. The girl I cared about looked just like his daughter when she was a teenager. They'd had a falling out 2 years earlier, around the time he said his daughter died. I also learned the girl I knew hadn't wanted to be adopted. She thought it was too much. But Mike was grooming her, showering her with gifts, playing the father figure her real dad never was. Suddenly, all the red flags I'd ignored came flooding back. How could I have been so stupid? He talked about his time with the Hells Angels, how he put a guy in the hospital after a bar fight right before I met him. He spent his days hanging out at a coffee shop with teenagers. I started thinking about all the times he'd been there for me, picking me up drunk from parties, drinking at my place, me sleeping over at his house. He'd never done or said anything inappropriate to me, always super protective, but now it all felt wrong. The police and news reporters started calling me almost daily, asking what I knew about him, wanting every detail. I ignored the reporters, terrified he'd see me on TV. He was eventually found, questioned, and released. Not a suspect, but then he vanished again. I never spoke to him after that. 2 months after she went missing, they found her body. It was ruled a homicide. That was a year ago, and there are no leads, no new info from the police. Everyone thinks Mike's the killer, even though he was never arrested. He lied about so much, his daughters, his past, and what his real daughter told me made it impossible to ignore the truth. I can't fit every detail here, but there's so much more that makes my skin crawl. I wonder where he is now, if he'll just show up one day while I'm minding my own business. Part of me still doesn't want to believe he could do it, but another part wonders if it could have been me they found. The worst part is the guilt. I was with them all the time, spent so much time with both of them. Why didn't I see the signs? Why didn't I step in? I'm so sorry.